Oh, you know those tango cruises? Like you can go on a cruise and you could teach tango on a cruise. Wouldn't that be amazing? Most people who pursue becoming a professional dancer have this idea that this is the way that they get to practice their art and make money. But the reality of what it actually takes to be a professional dancer, there are very different aspects and very different skill sets that you actually have to have, that it's not so much about your talent. The other day, my chiropractor, during our session, when she found out that I am a tango dancer, tango teacher, she said, "Oh, you know those tango cruises? Like you can go on a cruise and you could teach tango. Wouldn't that be amazing?" And she kind of dwelled on that idea for a few beats. And then, the conversation moved on, and I thought, gosh, for someone from the outside, the idea of being a professional tango dancer might sound this exotic, that you get to perhaps travel the world teaching tango on a boat, on a cruise, and you get both things. You get to dance and you get to make money. This is the fantasy, I think. Anybody who goes into professional tango possibly has this dream that has those components to it. Now, I didn't really want to be a professional tango dancer. I think if you had told me when I was graduating from college that my path in terms of my career would actually entail me becoming a professional tango dancer, I would have had a lot of doubts. When I first got introduced to tango, the first thing I said to myself, I wasn't going to teach it. I promised myself, partially because I tend to gravitate towards things that, of course, are really interesting to me, and I'm really passionate. I get really passionate about them, and then I end up teaching it. So I've done that with lots of things in my life. And by the time I came to tango, I was already a yoga teacher and an art professor at a university. I was a meditation teacher as well. I was just teaching a lot. And I got to that place with most of my activities where it was not enjoyable anymore. And so I thought I really wanted tango to stay pure, quote unquote. Like I didn't want to treat it so seriously. I didn't want it to matter so much the way other things mattered. Life then went on, and of course, things turned out very differently. And now looking back, it's very clear in hindsight, sort of where was I mistaken about what it actually means to be a professional dancer, and where I was kind of ignorant, just misled even in my own view about this idea of what it takes to be a professional dancer. Most people who pursue becoming a professional dancer or a professional artist have this idea that this is the way that they get to practice their art and make money. It's sort of this notion that instead of having to do something that you're not really interested in during the day and earn money for that, instead, you're going to put all of your energy into this thing that you love and get paid for it. So that's the idea. But the reality of what it actually takes to be a professional dancer or a professional yoga teacher or anyone in that field, in the field of body work and movement, very quickly you realize that there are very different aspects and very different skill sets that you actually have to have, that it's not so much about your talent. In tango, there's this image that if you practice enough and you get your dance beautiful enough, you have the perfect partner, and you cultivate your art to the nth degree, like you really practice every day and you really dedicate your time and you win championships, that is what's going to make it for you, that's really the path to becoming a successful dancer. But if you go that path, what you realize is that there are just so many people out there doing the same thing. And that becomes really challenging. How do you end up standing out among a sea of people who are doing the same thing? So it's extremely competitive. And I think that that piece of it is really, it really stings when I hear, dancers who are just like trying to make it on the scene, or they're trying to pursue tango, and they begin that journey, and how frustrated they are that they're not getting the due that they think they deserve, because they've put in all this time into their art and they're putting so much passion into it. But unfortunately, the passion is just not enough anymore. Like, you can have a lot of passion, but then there's people who have just as much passion, and they have all of these other skills they develop that make them more prominent in the fields. Now, of course, we need to define what I mean when I say a professional tango dancer, because being a professional in tango doesn't just mean that you only dance. Again, that's one of those fantasies I think that we might have going into it, and having that dream perhaps of dancing tango professionally. But most professional tango dancers end up doing multiple things that include teaching, DJing, traveling for workshops, of course, performance. And there's some professional dancers who actually go into the profession for the purpose of performing. Like, they want to be on stage, and that is where their heart is. So they will really spend a lot of time on choreography and honing their technique to where it looks very specific, very unique to them. But, they can't just go and perform and that's it. Like, the money ultimately is not going to be in the performing. The money is going to be in the privates and the workshops and the invitations to teach at other places. So even as a dancer dedicated to this performance art, that is really like, if you had a choice and if you just could do whatever you wanted all day long, it would be this. It would be performing in front of an audience. That's really where your heart is. The reality is that's going to be a very small percentage of what you actually do in order to sustain your career in the field. So let's talk about what a typical pathway for a social dancer in the tango world who becomes interested in being more of a professional. One way is that you would partner up and you would start teaching with your partners in different locations. You would travel and get known in the community. You might DJ as well, so you would be featured as a DJ. A lot of dancers actually don't like DJing, so you don't have to DJ, but that's sort of becomes part of your package if you are able to DJ. And then at every point that you go, you teach privates and you basically build a clientele. Now, within your community, very frequently, you might also become an organizer. And I'm going to do a separate episode next week on tango organizing, because it does deserve its own banter. But just know that organizing is part of the package that might be something that you do as a professional tango dancer. So you'll see that a lot of times a professional couple will design a program around their philosophy for their students, and then they'll have sort of a following, and they will create a weekly milonga or monthly events, and they become known in that way. Maybe they then travel and they perform in other places, and sort of that's kind of the steps that you would follow. So when I was on the verge of deciding to become a tango professional, I was very reluctant because I really didn't feel that I liked the traditional pathway of a professional tango dancer. I did not like the idea of partnering with a man. And I had been sort of approached by different milongueros who would invite me to tour with them and go to Europe and kind of dangle that carrot on a stick. But I just couldn't see myself being comfortable with that arrangement. Secondly, I did not want to wear heels anymore. So I gave up my heels. So I only was wearing flats. And I was told by another dancer who is really big on the circuit, has been dancing as a professional for many, many years, and who was a mentor to me at one point. He said to me that he did not think that I would make it as a professional in tango unless I wore heels. And honestly, I believed him. I wasn't really interested in performance either. And I think that's kind of a necessary ingredient, because for most couples who go to festivals, it's an expectation that they're going to perform. But I've always been of the mindset that my whole shtick is about social dancing. So if people want to see me dance, they can watch me at the Milonga. And I don't really feel that I have that much interest in the performance part of it. But, who knows? That might change, of course. But at the time, I was just like, it's not my thing. But what ended up pushing me in this direction, and something that I had to own, I just had to accept it as truth for myself. And that is, I love tango. I really, really love tango. And this desire to practice my craft as much as possible as I am helping other people to develop theirs, there is something really satisfying in that. And ultimately, this is why we're going to continue to have people go into the profession, because there is this real love for the art, for the dance, for what it represents. And ultimately, if you have that passion for the actual dance, that will carry you through. But what I realized once I, really committed to this path is that it is totally possible to completely extinguish your own fire, your own love for it. And this is what occurred to me many times. This is what I've seen with other dancers, that you can be really passionate about something, you can really love it and pursue it. But if you're not careful, you can actually pursue it to such an extent that it consumes all of you and you end up hating it. So that's a very common side effect, I think, of any creative types. I would say it's common among artists, it's common among dancers, maybe even actors, writers, anybody who's a creative person who begins to pursue their art as a career, realizes that you have to be creative on a dime. That it's not that it's going to be this utopian experience of constantly being inspired and pursue your art in this heightened awareness of the beauty of what you're doing. No, a lot of it is going to be stuff you don't want to do and things that don't feel good to do, but you have to, because in order to be a professional, you kind of have to earn your right to call yourself that. If there's a professional dancer who comes to a community and they're really interested in showing off their skill set and their prowess, but they don't really do anything to connect with the community and reach out in some way and build those relationships, you really will not see those dancers thrive. We have so many professional couples, professional dancers who want our attention. And I think as tango grows, there's only going to be more of it, which is not a bad thing. I mean, if you were talking about works of art, when Claude Monet and Van Gogh and all of those impressionist artists were putting out their art, and somebody would say, too much art. You need to stop. You need to stop putting out so many paintings, right? Nobody would say that. So people who pursue performance tango and pursue this format of expression, they're doing it as their art form. So there should be more of it. But there needs to be an awareness on both sides that, first of all, there's a lot of it already. And secondly, that as social dancers, we are very picky for a lot of us. Like, there's always going to be half the room at any milonga who does not want to be watching a performance, right? Every performance, there's somebody who would rather be dancing. So in my mind, whoever decides to perform, it's like you really need to bring something special. You need to earn the time that you're taking. There's an impression that being a professional dancer is really fun, that you get paid to dance, but the cost to the professional dancer is a lot of times overlooked, even from the perspective of like, okay, there's rental costs that are always included in the deal. There's travel costs. There's health costs that come around from teachers working their bodies too much and performing too much and having to deal with injuries. So there's all these costs that are part of the profession. And we haven't even touched on the cost that is the most frustrating, the one that most professional dancers and professional yoga teachers, anyone in that field, wishes that there was not that high of a cost. And that is the time spent for actually marketing yourself and doing the outreach and building the relationships with the people who are going to be employing you or people who are going to lead you to other opportunities. That's the part that I had to learn and had to accept as part of the job. And most dancers, myself included, would rather not have to do that. So this loss of love for the thing that you actually want to be doing is very common among professional tango dancers who have to teach a lot. And sometimes as dancers, social dancers, we might look at a professional dancer and judge them for their lack of interest in dancing at a milonga. So I actually watched somebody complain about this recently at an event. And this woman had a point, and she said, I watch these professionals and they're just sitting in the corner. It would just be so nice if they would mingle and dance with somebody at the milonga. And the defense from the person who was listening to this is they said, this is their time to rest. This is their time to unwind because they are doing this all day, every day. They're teaching all day, every day. And these two sides are always at odds. Both sides, you can see the truth of that. I, as a teacher myself, I can relate to that there is this feeling that's very prevalent, like that you get so tired of the thing that you're doing. And, it almost can happen on a daily basis. I was actually standing at a milonga the other night, and a friend of mine came up to me and she said, do you ever get tired, like really fed up with tango? And I was like, every day. And the truth is, when you are pursuing the thing that you love professionally, it's like, it's not fun and games all the time. You're not doing it because it feels so fun. You're doing it because you're really committed to doing it well. You know the goal that you're after, which is this desire to commit your time to this thing that's beautiful, that brings all this meaning to people, that you want to show through your movement and inspire people. That's the vision, right? But that vision costs. These are the costs that are involved. It costs your time, it costs your energy, it costs your enthusiasm in other places around tango. Like, I used to be very judgmental of this narrative that I would hear from some of the teachers as they would say, oh my gosh, I teach 10 privates a day from morning till night. It's like I get up, I have a cup of coffee, and I have privates all day long until 8 p.m. And by that point, I don't want to go to a milonga. I don't want to dance. And to me, I'd be like, well, why would you do so many privates that you wouldn't want to dance? Like, isn't the dancing more important? Like, wouldn't you prioritize that? That was my judgment. And now I totally see what they're saying. Like, there are many times that I choose not to go to a milonga because I've been dancing all day, I've been teaching, and the last thing I feel like doing is doing more of that. It feels more exhausting. So that dynamic then creates a little bit of a separation between regular social dancers and professional dancers. And you might experience that like when you go to a milonga and you're like kind of fresh and you're ready to go, you have a lot of enthusiasm around dancing with new people. But a professional dancer who's been there all day long teaching privates and going to the daytime milonga too, they might come in and they might automatically feel a bit more reserved because they're kind of like at the end of their energy. And that sort of dynamic, that inequality of energy between the two, that sets up a lot of friction, I think, for social dancers who feel like professional dancers don't give them enough or the correct type of attention. And then on the part of the professionals, most of the time, there's this misunderstanding about the value of one's time and having to say yes to everything. So when it comes to being a professional dancer, you might just jump at every opportunity because you'll hear this thing about there's not much money in tango. And you know what? There's not. There's not. Again, you wouldn't do this for the money, right? Like you wouldn't tell somebody to pursue tango and become a tango professional because it's very lucrative. It's not. You're doing it for this other reason. So a lot of professional dancers end up saying yes to a lot of things and they just jump at the opportunities because they want to make money. And at the same time, this is the biggest point of tension, I think, that I'm going to articulate now for you. And I want you to watch for it because it's so present in everything that we think about tango, social tango, and how it's run. And that is that on some level, everybody believes that tango and tango instruction should either be free or highly discounted. There's a belief that being a tango teacher, a professional tango dancer, is not as highly valued as some other professions. So people get really antsy about the cost of tango goods or tango services and how much they're charged. And there's a lot of bargain hunting, and a lot of teachers end up trying to be competitive by lowering their prices. And overall, it just creates this anxiety for both sides because on the one hand, you can believe that it should be free and it should be low cost. On the other hand, you have this real need to make money so that the artists, the dancers can pursue their art and continue to do what they're doing. So there's this conflict that's always there at the moment of exchange of money for professional dancers. And I think that's really where a lot of the tension arises between social dancers and professional dancers. That there's a misunderstanding, perhaps, of what we're really doing here. Because if things were free and everybody was just donating whatever they could and it was like a nonprofit, like it would be a very different organism. It would be a very different experience. But as professionals, as a dance instructor, as a professional dancer, as a performer, we are in essence a provider of a particular service, right? We're just as legitimate in our claim for compensation as any business would be. As a coffee shop that provides space and a nice atmosphere for somebody to come in, and somebody would pay to be in that space. So with professional dancers, a lot of times there's this guilt. They want to make money, they want to charge, and they want to make it as free as possible. So there's a lot of just giving away of their energy and burnout. So a lot of the professional dancers end up burning out. Now, we haven't really addressed even the challenge of the partnership, the tango partnership. Because as I said, I didn't feel that I had qualifications to be a professional dancer. And one of the reasons was I did not have a partner. And I really thought that you have to have a partner in order to be a professional in tango. And here it's very interesting how the market in tango really favors one over the other. It favors men. So if you're a guy becoming a professional dancer, you will have your pick of so many amazing followers anywhere around the world. It's astonishing how much choice there is. But if you're a woman and a follower, you're going into tango as a follower, and you want to become a professional dancer, you're sort of at the mercy of the professional men who are out there. And that's really unfortunate how it's not symmetrical in this respect. It's not as easy for female dancers to make it on their own. So the market for partnerships, the demand for finding a good partner is really, really high for professional female dancers. I met so many women in Buenos Aires when I was there, and since then, I've talked to lots of women who their whole desire for their life is to find a partner who could be working with them artistically, creatively, in a tango partnership. And they talk about how difficult, how competitive it is, how difficult it is to find somebody with whom you really work well and with whom you're romantic, because for many reasons that are so frustrating, it just so happens that couples who are also romantically involved, and they're professional couples, somehow they garner more love and attention than other couples. I've seen some examples of this that stray away from this kind of idea, but still there is a desire, there's a fantasy that it's also a romantic relationship. Like if you can have both, that's really the holy grail. If you can have a romantic partner who you also work well with in the construct of a professional partnership, and you travel around the world and you dance for thousands of people, yes, that's an amazing reality for some couples. But for most people who get into professional tango, it's very difficult to find a partner that they work well with. And a lot of times, if it's romantic, it might be also very volatile. So there's been so many people who get together and have partnerships, and then they just sort of dissolve because the romance dies out and that couple doesn't dance together anymore. It's tricky no matter how you turn it. When I look at couples, professional couples these days, who have made it, who've survived, who've been together for a long time, and they're still very vibrant. They're sort of modeling for us what could be possible. I observe these qualities in them that I think are the qualities that we can all aspire to be, whether we're professional dancers or social dancers. One is that they're extremely generous with their energy, and they are obviously in love with what they're doing, and they're having so much fun doing it. But somehow they've struck this balance of their professional commitment to it and their actual playfulness of their love for it. And that shows up in the generosity of their energy, where they're just having such a good time being there. It doesn't even matter who's there, whether it's 5 people or 20. They have that enthusiasm. Whenever I see that, that's kind of the quality that I feel makes you successful long term when you're able to retain that spark. It helps professionally, and it also is the thing that makes you successful socially. When you feel so good about yourself, about your dance, and you're enjoying yourself so much, that's the vibe that a lot of times attracts other people to you. I'm curious what this banter brought up for you. Pop those thoughts below in the comments. If you want more of this kind of banter and you have not joined my private Facebook group, check it out. Every Friday, I go live inside that group and we banter about things like this, and would love to have you in there. So the link for that is in the show notes. We will continue this banter next week. Until then, ciao.